December 16, 1944. Schneele Forest on the Belgian-German border. Gerrit Klaus Zimmermann's numb fingers fumbled with dividing 6 cigarettes among 8 men, estimating fractions in the pre-dawn chill while American artillery boomed in the distance. They had been promised special rations for Hitler's Ardennes offensive. But here they were rationing their meager daily cigarette allowance like destitute individuals, sharing scarce breadcrumbs. "20 meters away in the woods lay an American soldier killed the previous day. In his pockets, Zimmermann discovered 3 full packs of Lucky Strikes, 60 cigarettes along with chocolate bars, chewing gum, and instant coffee, items far more plentiful than anything seen in months by his entire company. This find would set off a chain reaction that psychologically shattered morale within the Wehrmacht, more effectively than any battlefield defeat could have done. Unbeknownst to Zimmermann, 4 kilometers away, American factories were manufacturing an astounding 290 billion cigarettes annually for their armed forces, with Hershey alone producing 24 million chocolate bars, weekly specifically for military rations. The stark contrast between abundance and scarcity was evident not in strategic planning rooms, but in the pockets of soldiers where everyday luxuries served as harbingers of impending doom. The Wehrmacht's rationing system of 1944 existed largely on paper rather than in practice. On paper, each German soldier was allotted a daily provision that seemed adequate: 752 grams of bread, 45 grams of butter, or fat, 25 grams of butter, or fat, 25 grams of meat when available, and 7 cigarettes or 2 cigars. However, regulations limited soldiers to no more than 6 free cigarettes per day, a restriction that became meaningless as supplies dwindled. Established in 1939, this rationing system had been progressively reduced as Germany's military situation deteriorated. Nevertheless, the theoretical rations exposed a fundamental miscalculation about modern industrial warfare by the Reich. Obergreiter Wilhelm Hoffmann, stationed with the 35 22nd Infantry Division in Normandy, noted in his diary entry from May 1944, "The supply sergeant laughed when I asked about our cigarette ration." Over the past 2 months, we received 6 deliveries per week, all of which were French captures from 1940. These cigarettes were so old they disintegrated when lit. According to historian Robert N. Proctor's research in German archives, by 1944 a survey of the 7 of servicemen revealed that 87% smoked regularly despite a 20-34% decline in consumption due to severe shortages compared to pre-war levels. By 1942, 2/3 of Germany's tobacco factories had shut down and were repurposed for armaments production. Despite the SS leadership's anti-smoking stance, they supplied combat units with just 1.5 cigarettes daily and 6 per 4-day field ration, which was justified as a nerve tonic to alleviate combat stress. In contrast, the American K-ration exemplified industrial efficiency and military logistics. Each daily ration contained 3 meals and included various comfort items: 4 cigarettes per meal unit totaling 12 daily, chocolate bars that initially weighed 2 ounces but later were divided into 2 1-ounce pieces, chewing gum, instant coffee, sugar tablets, and toilet paper. The cigarettes, brands such as Camel, Lucky Strike, Chesterfield, and Philip Morris, came fresh in waterproof cellophane packaging with matches included. Major Robert Johnson of the U.S. Army Quartermaster Corps observed in a 1944 report, "The inclusion of cigarettes in confectionery serves purposes beyond mere comfort. These items boost morale, provide quick energy, and serve as universal currency in liberated territories." The cost per soldier's daily comfort items is estimated at 47 cents, which the United States can afford to spend 11 million times a day. These allocation figures illustrate 2 fundamentally different war economies. All won 1943, American tobacco companies fully committed to the war effort by producing staggering quantities of cigarettes. The American Tobacco Company alone manufactured 75 billion annually, with R.J. Reynolds adding another 60 billion and Liggett and Myers contributing an additional 50 billion. These businesses shifted their production entirely to military supplies, relegating civilian markets to a secondary status. Soldiers could buy extra cigarettes at army stores for just 50 cents a carton or 5 cents a pack. In contrast, Germany's cigarette output in 1944 was around 40 billion, and the Wehrmacht competed with 80 million civilians for this limited supply. The numbers were telling. America manufactured 725 cigarettes for each German cigarette, while sustaining a better-equipped military force and maintaining a civilian populace that experienced relative prosperity. Hauptmann Friedrich Becke, a staff officer captured in Italy, later told American interrogators, "We calculated everything: ammunition, fuel, tanks, but we never considered cigarettes and chocolate. We should have." They revealed who would triumph. The chocolate disparity was even more revealing. Hershey's military production reached 24 million bars weekly at its peak, surpassing Germany's entire confectionery industry output. The company created the D-bar specifically for troops, a 4-ounce chocolate and oat flour mix that could withstand temperatures up to 110 degrees Fahrenheit and provided 600 calories in a compact form. Between 1940 and 1945, Hershey produced over 3 billion chocolate bars for the military, earning the Army-Navy E-Production Award 5 times. Milton Hershey famously stated, "The American soldier will perform better knowing he has chocolate in his pocket. A taste of home in hell's midst." Upon seizing Russian outposts, our troops scour the deceased not for intelligence but for macoca, a coarse tobacco blend. This is then rolled in pages torn from Pravda, Soviet propaganda transformed into sustenance for German lungs. Soldiers found this irony particularly biting, representatives of the master race resorting to smoking Russian peasant tobacco encased in communist newspapers, while American soldiers, portrayed by Nazi propaganda as weak and indulgent, carried ample packs of high-quality cigarettes as standard issue. Kurt Weber, from the 4th Panzer Army, documented a revealing episode in January 1943. Our forces overran an American supply drop intended for the Russians. The crates were filled with Lend-Lease provisions, Spam, Maxwell House coffee, and Lucky Strikes. It became clear that the Americans supplied their allies better than Germany could its own troops. We fought among ourselves to secure chocolate bars while opening crates containing more cigarettes than our entire regiment had received in 3 months. The Lend-Lease program shipped billions of cigarettes along with 70,000 tons of processed fruit items like chocolate and coffee to the Soviet Union. American industrial might was capable of providing its own forces generously while supplying allies with luxuries that the Wehrmacht could only dream about. During the Italian campaign from 1943 to 1944, German soldiers experienced American abundance firsthand for the first time. As they retreated northward, they encountered American supply lines operating on principles incomprehensible to the German military mindset. Captain Jacob Richa of the 1st Fallschirmjäger Division wrote in February 1944 about an incident at Monte Cassino: "The Americans fire more artillery ammunition in 1 hour than we receive in a week." Even worse for morale is what they leave behind in their destroyed positions: discarded chocolate wrappers, empty cigarette cartons, and half-empty cans of food. They discard more supplies than our troops ever receive. This psychological impact was further compounded when German soldiers discovered American supply depots. Unlike the meticulously concealed and fiercely protected German supply caches, American supplies appeared to be abundant and loosely managed. A single captured American quartermaster truck could contain more comfort items than an entire German battalion would receive in a month. On Razzia, France, Hartmann reminisced about finding an abandoned American supply point near Anio. Hundreds of cases of K-rations were strewn about, each box brimming with cigarettes and chocolate. Our calculations indicated that this single supply depot, seemingly insignificant to the Americans, contained more cigarettes than our entire division had received since entering Italy. My men stuffed their pockets, bread bags, and gas mask containers with Lucky Strikes and Hershey bars. For 2 weeks, we indulged in American cigarettes until they ran out, and when our usual ration of 6 per day resumed, several men broke down in tears. Grenadier Joseph Fagner from the 21st Panzer Division described encountering scattered American paratrooper supplies across the Norman countryside. Each American soldier seemed to have parachuted down with a personal tobacco store. We discovered containers packed with cartons of cigarettes, each carton containing more than our company received in an entire month. Chocolate was everywhere, some varieties designed not to melt in the heat. Our emergency rations, meanwhile, consisted of tins of meat canned as early as 1941. The stark contrast severely demoralized German defenders. Heinrich Schmidt of the 35 Tessent Infantry Division noted, "My soldiers are volunteering for patrols, not to gather intelligence, but to search dead Americans for cigarettes and chocolate." A single fallen American soldier provides more comfort items than our supply system can offer. This is no longer a battle. It feels like rich men dueling with porpoises. The continuous influx of fresh American troops worsened the psychological impact on German forces. As units disintegrated due to casualties and shortages, new American soldiers arrived daily, each equipped with full rations, including their share of cigarettes and chocolate. Major Karl von Runet, unrelated to Field Marshal von Runet, who served as a supply officer for Panzer Division, meticulously recorded the stark statistics in his journal. He calculated that an individual American division in Normandy consumed about 13,000 cigarettes daily, more than 3 German divisions combined, if they had received their full ration, which hadn't been the case for 2 years. The scarcity of chocolate also weighed heavily on the Germans psychologically. In Germany, chocolate symbolized luxury and joy. Real chocolate was a distant memory by 1944, with ersatz alternatives like ersatz roasted barley candy selling at astronomical prices in black markets. Meanwhile, American soldiers treated chocolate as commonplace and often disposable. D-ration bars were intentionally unappetizing to discourage overindulgence, while tropical versions were designed to withstand heat. By late 1944, K-rations included commercial candies like Milky Way and Mars Torrid Zone bars made for hot climates. Gerritor Paul Zimmerman described finding an American position in the Hershey forest, where chocolate wrappers littered the ground, many with bite marks but left discarded. Gerritor Paul Zimmerman wrote about discovering an abandoned American post within the Hershey forest. The area was strewn with countless chocolate bar wrappers, some of which bore evidence of consumption, yet were carelessly tossed aside. My trembling hands gathered them as I licked away the remnants of chocolate from within the wrappers like an eager puppy. It was 1941 since I had last tasted genuine chocolate. The Americans discarded what my children would regard as a cherished treat. The U.S. military's chocolate initiative exemplified industrial power, harnessed for morale enhancement. Hershey wasn't the only company involved. Mars also churned out millions of specialized bars weekly for military consumption, and Nestle contributed its share in large quantities. In a 1944 memo, Colonel James Harrison noted, "When a soldier enjoys chocolate, he momentarily forgets the harsh realities of war. He feels at home and cared for by his nation, which boosts morale more effectively than any caloric benefit." German troops increasingly acknowledged the absence of this mindset in their own system. The Wehrmacht viewed soldiers as tools needing minimal upkeep, whereas the American military regarded them as humans entitled to comfort even amidst conflict. This philosophical distinction materialized through chocolate bars and cigarette packs, significantly undermining German morale more effectively than any propaganda could achieve. By late 1944, American cigarettes had become a universal medium of exchange in territories under German control, with a single pack of Lucky Strikes capable of purchasing a chicken and a carton, able to buy a bicycle. German troops increasingly relied on their modest salaries to purchase American cigarettes from black market vendors in France and Belgium. These cigarettes were often discarded or traded by American soldiers who had an excess supply. In September 1944, Hans Dietrich, a writer for Oberhof, documented the situation in Belgium, noting that it was deeply humiliating to buy American cigarettes with German marks from Belgian farmers who received them gratis from American soldiers. Despite Albert Speer's production miracles, Germany's war economy struggled to maintain the production of weapons and ammunition. Luxury items such as cigarettes and chocolate had been sacrificed for total war efforts. In contrast, America's economy, operating at unprecedented capacity, was producing both military equipment and consumer goods simultaneously. Germany managed to produce only 40,000 trucks, 25,000 aircraft, 8,000 tanks, and 40 billion cigarettes, the majority of which were reserved for civilians to maintain morale at home. The ratios clearly demonstrated that America could afford comfort while Germany barely managed survival. The American supply system that delivered cigarettes and chocolate to frontline troops was a testament to logistics as an art form. From factories to foxholes, the delivery system operated with meticulous precision, drawing admiration from German officers who also felt personal despair over their own country's shortcomings. Daily shipments departed from American ports, carrying millions of tons of supplies on Liberty ships mass, produced at rates that Germany could hardly imagine, filled with everything from Sherman tanks to Hershey bars. Upon arriving at British or French ports, the distribution of supplies proceeded through a network that appeared to function beyond the usual limitations of wartime logistics. Headman Eric Weiss, a captured logistics officer from France, later recounted his interrogation by American intelligence officers who inquired about our supply routes, depot locations, and logistical difficulties. When I detailed our system, including delays, shortages, and constant improvisations, they seemed genuinely perplexed. An officer once asked, "But how do you manage to distribute cigarettes regularly?" I laughed when I told him we didn't prioritize them, and he looked at me with pity rather than triumph. The Red Ball Express, a renowned American supply line stretching from Normandy to the advancing front, transported both combat supplies and comfort items with equal importance. Running from August 25th to November 16, 1944, this operation lasted for 81 days and moved 419 tons of supplies over routes that extended up to 750 miles one way at their longest distance. At its peak, as many as 545-8 vehicles operated simultaneously, with 75% of the 23,000 drivers being African-American soldiers serving in segregated units. The operation's single record day was August 29, 1944, when it delivered up to 12,3442 tons. By comparison, German supply trucks, when they managed to secure fuel, made perilous and infrequent runs carrying only essential ammunition and medical supplies. Lieutenant Robert Mason, who drove for the Red Ball Express, recalled, "We would pull into a forward depot and unload cases of ammo right next to cases." Both were treated with equal urgency and efficiency. Chocolate bars were considered as vital as bullets by the quartermasters. The winter from 1944 to 1945 exposed this supply disparity at its most stark. During the Battle of the Bulge, which began on December 16, 1944, Germany's last major offensive saw soldiers advancing through American positions and capturing supplies that mocked their own scarcity. Hitler had thrown over 2,5 and 2,7 troops into the Ardennes region for his final gamble, but the offensive was partially thwarted by an unexpected factor: German soldiers stopping to loot American supplies. Gerrit Friedrich Bauer, leading the 1st SS Panzer Division, documented his experience. "We came across an American field kitchen with hot coffee still brewing and stacks of rations filled with cigarettes and chocolate. Fresh bread and canned fruit completed the scene. We indulged until we were full and then stuffed our pockets with as many cigarettes as possible before moving on." My squad leader remarked, "This isn't about defeating them, it's like raiding their pantry." Units frequently halted their advances to feast on captured rations, a move that had a profound psychological impact. Soldiers witnessed firsthand the disparity between American and German provisions. Americans could lose vast amounts of supplies without batting an eye, while Germans struggled with severe food shortages. Feldwebel Otto Kraus recalled discovering an abandoned American supply truck hit by artillery. Combat veterans who had been through 5 years of war were reduced to bickering over sweets. The deceased driver's pockets held more cigarettes than I had seen in 6 months. Meanwhile, besieged American forces in Bastogne received airdrops that included not only ammunition and medical supplies, but also an abundance of cigarettes and chocolate. The defenders smoked freely even as they faced overwhelming odds, while their German counterparts struggled with dwindling rations. Even after surrendering, German soldiers continued to experience the shock of plentiful provisions when transferred to American prisoner of war camps. These facilities provided them with more cigarettes and better food than they had received during active service. This unexpected generosity was incomprehensible in a context defined by scarcity, shattering any remaining illusions about German superiority. Wolfgang Mühr, who was captured during the Battle of the Bulge, detailed his initial days as a prisoner. The Americans provided each detainee with 5 cigarettes per day, which was just one less than our supposed military ration that we never actually received. They apologized for limiting chocolate to twice a week, but after not seeing it in 2 years, this apology seemed inadequate. German prisoners of war in American camps were given regular rations that included both cigarettes and chocolate. Even after Germany's surrender in May 1945, when they were reclassified as disarmed enemy forces to avoid Geneva Convention obligations, their living conditions remained superior to those of soldiers. For instance, one prisoner noted a weight gain from 1.8 pounds to 1.85 pounds during his captivity, and another reminisced about choosing between ice cream and Coca-Cola at Fort Lewis in 1944. These luxuries were not even available to American civilians due to rationing measures. The psychological impact was profound as prisoners wrote home about the abundance they experienced. Letters often carried hidden messages that effectively countered Nazi propaganda more than any Allied broadcast could manage. "We eat better here as prisoners than we did as soldiers," one prisoner wrote, while another noted, "The Americans have so much that they can afford to be kind even to their enemies." In contrast, American soldiers complained about the monotony of K-ration meals, whereas German civilians struggled with starvation. By 1944, the cigarette ration for German civilians had been reduced to 3 per day, and later to 2. Eventually, it became purely theoretical as supplies dwindled. Women under 25 or over 55 were completely denied tobacco rations. Chocolate disappeared from general availability, except for those in political favor. By 1945, urban residents subsisted on between 1,000 and 1,671 calories daily, depending on the region. Gerrit Hermann Wolff received a letter from his wife in war, torn Berlin. Little Claus inquires about when Papa will bring home chocolate, and I inform him it won't be until after the war ends. He then asks for a specific timeline, but I am unable to provide one. This week we received our ration of cigarettes, 4 sticks for 7 days, and traded them for a kilogram of potatoes. In contrast, American soldiers were sending home packages filled with chocolate and cigarettes as gifts. The United States Postal Service delivered millions of such parcels containing luxury items that German families could only dream of. The disparity went beyond military capabilities. It reflected an entire cultural difference. Private First Class Tommy Rodriguez wrote to his mother in Texas, "Sending you some German money as souvenirs along with a few chocolate bars. We have plenty, so don't worry about needing them. Trade the cigarettes I'm sending your father for something nice for yourself." This casual abundance would have been unimaginable for most Germans. Behind these gifts lay the stark reality of America's industrial might. Factories that produced B-17 bombers also churned out chocolate bars. Those same plants that manufactured Liberty ships also packaged cigarettes. The United States churned out an astounding 290 billion cigarettes annually for military use, produced 3 billion chocolate bars from Hershey alone, and manufactured over 500 million worth of coffee and 100 million pounds of chewing gum. Germany's entire economy failed to match the comfort item production output of America, let alone its military capabilities. The Wehrmacht faced a post-scarcity military force with an abundance of resources, while struggling to sustain itself during wartime conditions. Each discarded American cigarette butt in the European mud symbolized industrial might that Germany could not replicate. During post-war interrogations, General Heinz Guderian acknowledged, "We assessed divisions, tanks, and aircraft, but should have focused on cigarettes and chocolate bars instead." America's ability to wage war while experiencing minimal disruption was evident. In contrast, feeding German soldiers and civilians for their nation, American military psychologists had quantified morale factors scientifically. Research demonstrated that regular access to cigarettes improved soldier performance by 15% in combat scenarios, and chocolate consumption correlated with reduced fatigue levels among troops. The Quartermaster Corps viewed comfort items as force multipliers, rather than mere luxuries. This belief in a system that values their well-being translates into combat effectiveness, surpassing the intrinsic value of these items. German soldiers increasingly realized this disparity within their own ranks. The Wehrmacht demanded sacrifices without offering comfort, pushing troops to endure hardship without reward. Each missing cigarette or chocolate bar highlighted to them how expendable they were deemed by their system. Lieutenant Friedrich Hoffmann recorded in his diary, "All be Americans fight knowing their country cares for their comfort." A carton of Lucky Strikes could secure a Luga pistol. German soldiers exchanged military equipment for American comfort items, highlighting their priorities. In occupied towns, American soldiers inadvertently became masters through small acts of generosity. GI soldiers who gave chocolate to children or cigarettes to elderly Germans won more psychological victories than combat ever did. The defeated population starkly contrasted American abundance with German poverty. Carl Zimmermann, a U.S. soldier, observed an American private giving an entire K-ration to a German child. At that moment, the child received more chocolate than they had seen since 1940. The mother wept, saying, not out of humiliation, but from gratitude. This American private, likely drafted from a factory job, could offer charity beyond what our officers imagined possible. Master Sergeant Bill Patterson, who served as supply sergeant for the 29th Infantry Division, kept meticulous records that still exist in the National Archives. His accounts provide an American perspective on the disparity in supplies. In January 1945, Belgium distributed 45,000 cigarettes to our battalion today. The boys complained about receiving Philip Morris instead of Lucky Strikes. I had to discard 240 water-damaged chocolate bars due to strict regulations prohibiting the distribution of compromised comfort items. The German prisoners being watched observed us burning the still edible chocolate, and one of them even shed tears over it. This incident took place in February 1945 in Germany. A supply truck carrying goods was hit by a mine earlier that month, resulting in the loss of 10,000 cigarettes and 50,000 cigarettes and 55,000 cigarettes and Vistine worth of chocolate. According to Division HQ, a replacement shipment is due to arrive tomorrow. No major concern there. During cleanup operations, the German prisoners assisted and took advantage of the damaged cigarette packs and broken chocolate by stashing them away. The guards turned a blind eye, reasoning that we would have an excess supply arriving soon anyway. In March 1, 1945, our forces captured a German supply depot along the Rye River. It was underwhelming, containing perhaps 1,000 cigarettes, all of French brands dating back to 1940, alongside no chocolate or coffee, but some form of ersatz tea. The supply sergeant's records indicated that this meager stash was intended to sustain an entire regiment for 1 month, whereas we allocate more than this daily just to meet the needs of a single company. Dr. Vera Schreiber, a German chemist involved in the development of ersatz chocolate, gave post-war testimony about Germany's efforts to replicate American comfort items. We tried everything, from mixing roasted barley with saccharin to simulate chocolate flavor and drying beet leaves as an alternative for tobacco. But our results were abysmal. American soldiers enjoyed genuine chocolate bars containing 600 calories each, while our ersatz chocolate had a mere 100 calories and tasted like dirt mixed with sugar. They smoked Virginia tobacco, whereas we resorted to smoking anything that would burn and produce smoke. The Americans applied the same level of scientific rigor to comfort items as they did to weapons development. Food scientists at Hershey created heat-resistant chocolate, and tobacco companies perfected moisture-proof packaging. Despite being regarded as masters of science and efficiency, Germans struggled to provide their soldiers with edible chocolate or smokable cigarettes. Operation Varsity, an Allied crossing of the Rhine on March 24, 1945, showcased American logistical superiority in its most comprehensive form. This largest single-day airborne operation in history deployed a total of 1667 per 7070 paratroopers, old the 1730A7, from the 1734 Division and 7220 from the British 6th Airborne Division, with extra cigarette rations and chocolate bars specifically for German civilians. The invasion included not only military conquest, but also a form of comfort item diplomacy. It worked. Instead of reporting our positions, kids came asking for chocolate. Their mothers, driven by any form of solace they could find, gladly welcomed us for cigarettes. We prevailed through the distribution of Hershey bars. German defenders observed American soldiers indulging in abundance while struggling to survive themselves. Local defense units, Germany's final line of militia, frequently included elderly men who hadn't had chocolate since the 1930s and children who had never tasted it before. In contrast, they encountered Americans who complained about the variety of their rations. Franz Muller, an Oberstreiter, penned his last diary entry prior to surrendering. The American soldiers approached our position with chocolate in hand and cigarettes constantly lit. We lacked both ammunition and cigarettes. The war was effectively over when they could afford such luxuries in combat. The encirclement of German Army Group B within the Ruhr pocket from April 1st to 18th, 1945, highlighted the most extreme supply disparity of the war. The encirclement concluded on April 1st when Allied forces met near Lippstadt. Inside the pocket, approximately 17,000 German soldiers slowly succumbed to starvation. Meanwhile, American forces outside maintained robust supply lines, including regular deliveries of comfort items. General Fritz Bohlein, commander of the defunct Panzer Division, negotiated surrender terms with American forces. He later recalled that the American colonel offered me a cigarette during our negotiations. It was even a full pack, which I could keep. I hadn't seen such an abundance in 2 years. He smoked continuously throughout our meeting, discarding half-smoked cigarettes. Each cigarette butt signified a greater supply of tobacco than my troops had encountered in weeks. American psychological warfare teams capitalized on this disparity by broadcasting messages over loudspeakers. German soldiers, we are enjoying warm meals and genuine coffee while you go hungry. Every American soldier possesses cigarettes and chocolate. Surrender now and have dinner tonight. The broadcasts were effective because the German soldiers knew they reflected reality. On April 18th, the final surrender resulted in exactly 17,000 prisoners being captured, surpassing the total number taken during all of the North African campaign. Hans-Peter Richter, who was 12 years old in 1945 and lived near Frankfurt when American forces arrived, later wrote about the civilian experience. His memoir described his encounter with an American soldier eating chocolate as he walked. The first American I saw had a piece of chocolate in his hand, munching it casually like bread. My mouth watered because I hadn't tasted chocolate since I was 7 years old. The soldier noticed my gaze and handed me half his bar, more chocolate than my family had seen in 5 years. I ran home crying, clutching the precious candy as if it were gold. My mother divided the chocolate into tiny pieces, one for each member of our family. We ate it slowly and reverently. My little sister, born in 1942, tasted chocolate for the first time. She asked, "Does this mean we have won?" Mother replied, "Yes, this is what victory tastes like." Despite our defeat, the Americans had already claimed victory before engaging in combat by distributing American chocolates. Their occupation policy involved a widespread provision of comfort items to German civilians. Empty supply trucks were refilled with cigarettes and sweets for distribution through Operation Backhauling. This strategic generosity, which was inconceivable under German conditions, characterized by scarcity, expedited the psychological impact of surrender. By summer 1945, American soldiers stationed in occupied Germany were distributing around 100 million cigarettes each month to civilians. Adults received their cigarette rations through the American military government, and these quantities surpassed what the Nazi regime had ever supplied since 1942. Children waited in line for chocolate distributions, experiencing an abundance that was beyond their parents' wildest imagination during the war. Colonel Frank Howley, who served as the military governor of Berlin's American sector, observed, "Through chocolates and cigarettes, we govern just as effectively as with force." Each German child eating Hershey's chocolate and every adult smoking American cigarettes is an acknowledgement of American victory and prosperity. German economists analyzing the American occupation uncovered astonishing figures. The amount of free chocolate distributed to German children in 1945 was greater than Germany's total confectionery production from 1943 to 1945. Additionally, The cigarettes provided to German prisoners of war exceeded the Wehrmacht combat troop rations for the entire last year of the war. Professor Ludwig, who later became a key figure in the post-war German economic miracle, examined American supply capabilities and concluded that the Americans had defeated us through abundance rather than solely by military might. Every cigarette smoked and every chocolate bar consumed in Germany was a testament to our economic system's fundamental failure. In 1985, at a reunion of the 82nd Airborne Division, former Feldwebel Kurt Muller, now an American citizen, addressed his former enemies. "You defeated us as much with chocolates and cigarettes as you did with bullets and bombs." Each captured ration revealed America's formidable might. With such abundance, you could extend kindness. We had so little that humanity seemed unaffordable. Discovering American cigarettes on fallen paratroopers at Normandy made me realize Germany's impending defeat. A nation capable of providing every soldier with chocolate and cigarettes would surely triumph over one unable to do the same. American veterans applauded their former adversaries, who grasped war's profound lesson. Abundance fosters generosity, whereas scarcity breeds brutality. Amongst the German military archives was a letter from Frau Elisabeth Hoffmann to her son Leutnant Paul Hoffmann dated March 1945. "Paul, the Americans have arrived in our village. They gave little Anna chocolate, and when she ate it too quickly and became ill, an American medic provided medicine and more chocolate, telling her to consume it slowly. The Americans are so rich that they can give extra chocolates even to a sick German child. Your father traded his Iron Cross from the previous war for cigarettes from American soldiers, who laughed and gave him whole cartons, saying the medal was invaluable. Such wealth allows them to joke about such matters." After the war, it became clear how extensively the United States produced comfort items during World War II. From 1941 to 1945, cigarette production reached a staggering total of 1.2 trillion units. The daily peak output was 9 million cigarettes, with each serviceman receiving around 10,000 cigarettes annually. There were also 45 different brands available. At military stores, the cost per carton was 9 time. Regarding chocolate production, Hershey's military bars amounted to 3 billion units between 1941 and 1945, with peak weekly output reaching 24 million bars. Mars also contributed 1.5 billion military products. Annually, the total chocolate distributed to the military weighed in at 20 million pounds. Soldiers received approximately 600 calories from chocolate each day. In comparison, German production during the same period saw a combined total of 75 billion cigarettes for both military and civilian use, with an allocation of 40 billion specifically for the armed forces. Chocolate distribution was minimal after 1942, amounting to just 10 million pounds annually across all types. By that year, only 1/3 of tobacco factories remained operational in Germany. The figures uncovered by German soldiers, scattered across Europe, revealed a stark reality. While America engaged in World War II, its troops maintained living standards that surpassed those of Germany during peacetime. Prior to his suicide in April 1945, General Walter Model penned a final assessment that remained unsent. "We were convinced that sacrifice equated to strength, whereas comfort indicated weakness. Whereas comfort indicated weakness. Whereas comfort indicated weakness." The Americans demonstrated the contrary. Their soldiers fought with greater determination, knowing they could look forward to comfort. Our troops often surrendered out of despair over impending scarcity. They boosted morale through abundance, while we eroded it through lack. Each American cigarette symbolized a bullet, and every chocolate bar represented ammunition. We were overcome by an adversary who could afford luxury even as they decimated us. The statistics concerning cigarettes encapsulated the entire narrative of the war. If each German soldier had received their allotted 7 cigarettes daily, a limit reduced to 6 according to regulations, the annual requirement would have been 13 billion cigarettes. Germany's total production barely met this demand for both military and civilian consumption combined. America, however, produced this amount every 2 weeks exclusively for military use. Major Wilhelm Hoffmann, a Wehrmacht quartermaster captured in 1945, calculated the insurmountable equation. To match American cigarette distribution to their troops, Germany would have had to quintuple production while entirely cutting off civilian supply. Achieving parity with American chocolate distribution was mathematically unattainable, requiring an amount of cocoa that did not exist within accessible territories. When Field Marshal Wilhelm Keitel signed Germany's unconditional surrender on May 8, 1945, American generals offered cigarettes to the defeated German delegation. Keitel, a proud Prussian officer, readily accepted. In that instant, the war's stark reality became clear. Defeated soldiers were pleading for small comforts from their conquerors, who possessed an abundance to spare even for their enemies. Captain Harry Butcher, General Dwight Eisenhower's assistant, noted, "The Germans smoked American cigarettes as if they were drowning men gasping for air." Keitel slipped 3 packs into his coat pocket. These were once powerful leaders now reduced to scavenging for lucky strikes. If there was any proof needed of a total victory, it lay in the desperate gratitude these defeated soldiers showed towards American cigarettes. In 1950, 5 years after the war's end, a German schoolteacher in Hamburg asked her class what they remembered most about the conclusion of the conflict. Greta Miller, then 7 years old and only 2 when Americans arrived, raised her hand to say it was the chocolate rain. The soldiers threw candy bars from trucks like raindrops, and children raced behind them, snatching up the treats as they fell. My brother said that day felt like a reversal of fortune when sweetness replaced explosions. Frau Hoffmann, who had lost her husband on the Eastern Front, wrote in her diary, "Truest lesson, that wealth trumps ideology, comfort triumphs over sacrifice. Nations that can afford to share chocolates with enemy children have already emerged victorious." The supreme irony was revealed during post-war interviews. Soldiers who had fought tenaciously for a national socialist cause endured unimaginable hardships on the Eastern Front and maintained discipline despite overwhelming odds, confessed that they recognized defeat not when Allied forces landed at Normandy or Soviet armies entered German territory, nor even when Allied bombers darkened their skies, but rather when it became evident that American soldiers had an endless supply of cigarettes and chocolate while they themselves possessed none. In that acknowledgement lies the war's fundamental truth: industrial might, not racial superiority, dictated victory. However, we were outmatched by Americans who supplied themselves with an abundance of chocolate bars, factory workers carrying more cigarettes than our generals, and a nation wealthy enough to waste what we couldn't produce. From 1941 to 1945, American forces distributed 1.2 trillion cigarettes and 5 billion chocolate bars, along with 500 million worth of coffee and 100 million pieces of chewing gum, providing their soldiers an average daily intake of 4,300 calories. The figures showed what each German soldier discovered upon encountering Americans, that America was fighting a different kind of war. This was a conflict where soldiers anticipated and received comfort, a realm where industrial prowess manifested as much in chocolate bars as it did in bombers, ensuring victory for the nation capable of keeping its troops content while battling on 2 fronts simultaneously. The tale of Wehrmacht soldiers receiving 6 cigarettes daily compared to Americans having chocolate in every ration goes beyond mere supply differences. All the differences. It illustrates the collision of 2 fundamentally distinct systems, with outcomes dictated not by bravery or ideology, but by productive capacity. Every German soldier who came across American abundance through captured supplies, prisoner rations, or occupation largesse experienced this revelation firsthand. They found themselves facing a post-scarcity military force while their own stomachs were empty and cigarette cases barren. German soldiers had been told that racial superiority and resolve would compensate for material deficiencies. Instead, they discovered nations capable of supplying chocolate and cigarettes to millions of troops amid global warfare wielded power, extending beyond mere military might. The cigarettes and chocolate symbolized a deeper reality. America could afford such comforts because its system generated abundance, whereas Germany required sacrifice due to scarcity. American soldiers expected cigarettes and chocolate because their nation provided them. German soldiers learned to expect nothing since their nation had little to offer. Ultimately, the war's outcome was determined not by battle plans or ideological zeal, but by production figures, industrial capacity, and the tangible signs of power seen in chocolate bars and cigarette packs. A Wehrmacht soldier carefully rationing his allotted 6 cigarettes daily while observing American soldiers casually discarding half-smoked Lucky Strikes understood the true measure of power. When faced with the choice between luxury and doctrine, comfort prevailed. Abundance outweighed sacrifice in people's minds. Between nations that could offer sustenance to their troops versus those demanding resilience alone, there was no real contest. Verhungerung soldiers who occasionally received 6 cigarettes a day, if they were lucky, discovered what their commanders failed to grasp. In contemporary warfare, the nation capable of supplying its fighters with comfort items had already secured its victory. The chocolate in American K-rations and the cigarettes in American pockets weren't mere indulgences. Rather, they represented an inevitable triumph. Each taste of American chocolate, or puff on American cigarettes for a German veteran, was a stark reminder that the war's outcome had been decided long before the official surrender. Seeing this reality embodied in Hershey's chocolate and Lucky Strike tobacco, many soldiers knew their fate well before it became official. The lesson of World War II, inscribed in these small but significant items, declared that victory belonged to those who could provide abundance rather than those relying solely on sacrifice. Soldiers promised 6 cigarettes daily by the Wehrmacht system often received far less, while American troops carried chocolate and rations everywhere they went.